Internet, hello and welcome to KoiCast, a place where I talk about all the pop culture and stuff that I enjoy. I am Koi Jandro, a Bostonian recently back from New York who enjoys most pop culture, most things, and most people. I am joined as ever by someone somewhat the inverse of that, but he does enjoy many people, most pop culture things. And being in New York, I think that's the third tie-in. How are you today, Jake?
Fine, Koi, whatever.
I'd say not most people for you, but most art. I think that's fair to distinguish.
Yeah, fine, whatever, Koi. It doesn't matter. Why don't you just introduce your lifelong best friend, stupid Aaron, who you took to Comic-Con in New York for, whatever. I don't even care.
Stupid Aaron. You know what's funny? I'm going to open this with you almost getting a victory for Broadway, but you actually helping sell tickets for a shark show.
Oh, okay. See, I was trying to be mad at you because you just came from the place I'm at on the other side of the country and didn't even see me, didn't get a text message.
Did you come to New York Comic-Con? Did you make it across the river?
If you would have just said, like, hey, I'm going to be at this place tonight. If you want to come, I'll meet you. I got nothing. I got nothing from you at all. So I'm trying to be angry at you, but now I'm going to be okay if you said that you went.
So my schedule was literally like at 10 a.m. till like, I don't know, like, you know, Comic-Con the nights. No, I'm about to
care how busy you are. Friendship doesn't, you can't be too busy for friendship. Okay,
Koi? This ties directly in.
Plus, you aren't too busy for freaking Aaron.
Who flew in from Boston, which is more than a river that may or may not exist from Jersey. So we were slammed like throughout, but at one point we had the opportunity to catch a Broadway show, and we only had one ticket to go with the group that I was with for Comic-Con. Like basically, Aaron was have to go wander on his own at the same time slot was my point in bringing up the schedule. So with me at a Broadway show, Aaron was like, I don't know what show to see. I don't know any of these like, you know, non Hamilton based shows, like any of the not giant ones. And so I had recently heard all about this shark based, and any of the patrons have heard about this shark based play. And we were walking by and he's like, what is that? That's interesting. And I was like, well. So I got to give him this whole like 10-minute breakdown of how important it was and the crazy timing. I basically reiterated an episode of the Patron Pod.
Great.
And so on the spot,
which
Aaron
by the way,
bought a ticket.
By the way, proof he doesn't listen and he's not
to
a
the
patron.
Patron Pod. That's true.
Yeah,
that is proof.
He's not. I mean, so listen,
it's on him.
Once again, see, I listened to the show. All right.
Yeah,
I listened
Aaron.
to the show.
Why wasn't he there? So basically he buys a ticket on the spot, and then 4 hours later, we do have an extra seat for the Broadway show, so he ends up coming with us, but kept his paid for ticket to the shark show. So Aaron did contribute to the.
You know what?
He did help.
It would have been better if he went though.
All
he did was make an empty seat, which just makes everybody feel bad.
But he paid for it, so they got money. People like money.
Yeah, money isn't as good as word of mouth.
As a Full House.
People enjoying it.
But I mean, I do think it would have been great to see, because I did enjoy Broadway musical, which I'll talk about this week. I checked out the Back to the Future musical, which was a very interesting journey in space and time.
Yeah, I've heard mixed reviews.
I think I have a mixed review, but we'll talk about that when we get to that. But it was very fun to be like, I know an inside Broadway scoop.
Well, there you go.
So yeah,
it is really weird to me that you were just here 3,000 miles away.
That and like I landed at 3 a.m. and now it's like 1. This all just happened.
Also, I just mean like that it's weird that you were just like here in my city that I'm in now that we didn't see each other. I'm bummed that I didn't get a chance to go to con. I didn't know I was going to be in New York or else I would have gotten my pro pass. But I'm pretty sure this is the last year that I'm going to be able to claim that, because there's like a 3-year, you have to have like recent shit within 3 years. And because of the pandemic, I'm not a pro anymore.
Oh, that's so insane. What a mess.
Because it's within the 3 years. And I'm pretty sure like now I haven't worked on a major studio project since before 2020, since 2019.
Right.
So I don't think next year when I have to re-up, I'm going to actually qualify, but I digress. How did you enjoy your stay in New York?
New York is actually quickly catching up to San Diego for me as my favorite con. This one was really special. It was very comic focused. They've been gearing that way with the Hollywood studios, especially the combination of studios being at the MLS, but also the strike making it mandatory. But like Chip Zdarsky did his first appearance in years. Tom Hardy announced a comic. Like Tom Hardy's writing a comic.
Wow.
Which was really cool to see, like his passion for comic books translate from being both, obviously Bane and Venom. It's cool to see him want to play in the medium that he's done so much adapting.
He's like, man, I like comics. I'd like to do something good involving them.
Yeah, can I make a comic good myself? Because clearly I have...
or just anything good, really, is the point I'm trying to make.
I'm not letting you have this because you know I enjoy those Venom movies, and I think Bane is not as good as obviously the first two, but not as bad as people think. The drop-off was strong, but not like atrocious.
I'm going to say neither of those instances are his fault.
I completely agree. So now he's like, you know what? Comics seem like I have more control. I would like to write one of those, please. So he's actually writing a comic with Scott Snyder. So it's a really cool duo they're doing. Scott Snyder.
Oh, okay.
The guy that did Court of Owls, not the guy that did the Superman assassination.
I misheard you, and I thought you said Scott Steiner, which for a very few select people out there will find amusement.
I thought you heard Zach, and I saw your eyes bulge, but they were bulging the other way.
Well, that's good. And so it was very comic focused. It was very it's strange because you expect, because of the scale of New York City, you expect New York City Comic-Con to be like bigger than San Diego as far as like this is the entertainment capital of the world, New York City.
Yeah. And Marvel is obviously based there, or was, and all the characters are, so you'd expect New York to be the con. It's starting to feel like that. Obviously, San Diego's still great, but there is a sprawlingness to San Diego that makes it feel like, an animal.
At the end of the day, San Diego can literally take over a city, whereas New York City Comic-Con, you're going to get the building. You're not
a Javits Center. Sure is one big building of comicdom.
Yeah, you're not.
You walk 2 blocks out, you're not seeing cosplay. You walk 2 miles out in San Diego, you're like, oh, look at Mr. Fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the point I'm making. Is like there's surface area.
100%. And there's like yearly impact. I think San Diego like actually needs it, whereas New York's doing just fine. Right. But I really enjoyed the fact that the offsites here were like still close enough to the Javits to not feel insane. Whereas San Diego, sometimes you need to go across town. This was really cool because it was for example,
that's also just New York.
Yeah, I mean, I love a walkable city, as you know. Like I walk LA and I get weird looks, but like if it's an actual walkable city where I'm not the only person walking, net benefit for me. But while I was there was a Buffy pop up for they're bringing a Buffy back as an Audible series, and that's not struck. So since it's a podcast, they were actually able to do that. So one of my friends is in Buffy, so I actually flew over with her, and then she had, this comeback tour with the new Buffy. And it was great because my buddy Aaron, you were talking about, he that's his Spider-Man, like his big fandom, especially in high school, was Buffy. So it was really cool to bring him in. Like they built an immersive Buffy set. The cast was there. Like I got to introduce my buddy to my friend Emma. And then I also got to introduce him to like James Marsters, who is Spike, who I've like done a lot of work with. So it was really cool to show someone outside the nerd space, like professionally, he's an 8th grade teacher, what it's like to be at Comic-Con in this way. So it was really special to kind of like fold in my childhood world to my modern world and do it through with his fandom. Like I've seen 3 episodes of Buffy. Like it's not my fandom. I've seen 3, so I like have no association. So it would be like, I felt really cool.
That's like Alexandra. That's her like big childhood favorite fandom thing. Like that's what she was always obsessed with. And I had never really seen it until a couple years ago. And I was like, all right, I'll watch the show. But yeah, she would have probably flipped her shit just as much as Aaron did there.
It was so cute, man. And like, since Emma's an actual friend, it was really cute to like, I don't know, see his eyes light up with wonder and then feel like it wasn't an ask. Like when people are like work friends versus real friends, it's always hard to be like, this is my friend who's absolutely going to lose their mind, as opposed to like, this is going to happen because we're all friends and this is so precious. Also, we're in a tomb. So yeah, Comic-Con was great, man. I had a really good time. I'm exhausted. I've lost most of my voice. I did start drinking tea so I could even do this podcast because I figured the tech issues last time were enough. So I'm trying my damnedest to at least be somewhat good at this for the lovelies at home. But I did meet a lot of Koicast podcast listeners. I listened to the podcast at this con than I ever have at San Diego. I also had a dude recognize my voice while I said, excuse me, to someone in the bathroom. And said he listened to the podcast while I was trying to pee, and that was maybe my most uncomfortable favorite interaction, where I was like, I'm not sure how to navigate the social norms of this conversation, but I appreciate you very much. It was a really, I don't know, it was a con of being reminded why we do this, which is why I always need them to happen more than once a year, because it is a lot of yelling into the void. So if you said hi and that you listen to the podcast and are hearing this, know that I appreciate you very much, because it makes me yelling through a microphone attached to nothing and Jake on the other side of the country on a screen a little bit easier.
Also, join the Discord, too. If you're one of those people who said hi, but we don't know who you are, then join the Discord.
Oh, yeah, that does help.
So what was your favorite thing that you saw at Con outside of Tom Hardy's announcement and watching your friend nerd out over Buffy people?
I think my favorite overall element was everything kind of just stayed comic-centric, so the announcements felt huge, and then they were about comics. Nothing felt like, oh, and then comics. So DC had a whole big slate announcement. Got to talk to a bunch of the Marvel pros about the future of where things are going with the Ultimate Universe. Talked to John Romita Jr. a while about his Spider-Man stuff. But like, I don't know, it sounds like a cop-out, but just the foundation of comics staying at like an 11, nothing got in the way of that, even when there were announcements like I ran into Kid Cudi talking about Star Trek, and then we still cycled back to comics. So it was funny that like, even when things left course, they cycled back, and then it was like, no, we're here for comics. It felt like everyone got this memo that like the Comic Con had to come back to comics. So my favorite thing was feeling like my expertise was the reason we were all there, as opposed to, like, for example, a lot of TikTokers and cosplayers and stuff I knew were there and having fun and running around, and they never felt like othered, but it always came back to like, this cosplay represents this comic, not how do we leverage this into this Hall H line or whatever. It just stayed about like the reason this all started, and that was really special.
Is there like an equivalent to like New York Comic Con Hall H?
There's big rooms, but the main stage is just called main stage. So I think it's like 2,000 people versus the 6,500.
Oh, okay.
It's sizable. I had a panel for this property called Ghosts of Ruin, which is a manga inspired, anime inspired, but American animated series that is absolutely incredible. It's using Web3 to basically make the fan interactivity a real-time experience, like choose your own Goosebumps or whatnot. So my audience got to vote on like a certain take that Alexa was doing for her character. It got to make the audio cue for this in-universe gaming company like decision. So like the Apple Boom or the Netflix to Dumb, like they got to pick what the sound design was. And Hans Zimmer's team is doing the music, and Hans Zimmer's team was there. So they got to hear the audience like react to their work and decide which one they were going to use. And then at the end of the panel, we actually, and the reason I'm saying all this is that room was a 1,000-person room. So it's one of the bigger rooms, and it was really full of people like super enthusiastic to participate. So the end of the panel was us basically getting crowd sounds from those that wanted to participate of like, it's a tournament. So like cheering or booing. And it was really fun as a host to kind of like have an orchestra of hundreds of voices that I was getting to play with the cast and crew, seeing the passion for their project in real time and knowing that the recording from Comic-Con was going to be forever the use of the sound in the show that would then be shown at the next Comic-Con. So it was this really beautiful Ouroboros of fandom of like, you guys cheering is the cheering, and they're hearing you as the voice actors cheering, and they'll use that in their work. And it was just this really special interactivity of fans.
Nice. So what I'm hearing ultimately is while the SAG-AFTRA is on strike, you just got free performance labor, is what I'm hearing from that.
What you're hearing is a bunch of scabs. A bunch of scabs. No, it's a different contract. I made sure before I left. But yes, their free labor is appreciated.
Right on. All right. Is there anything else in the news or anything like that, or any other?
Just briefly, I know we were thinking the strike might be over last time when we recorded next time. Right. It is still ongoing for the actors, which I think has caused some confusion. The writer's strike has been officially ratified and over, but the actors are still on strike, and there was actually a pretty tumultuous meeting last week that canceled all future meetings. The AMTP has walked away from the table, so as of now, there is no negotiation. And the straw that broke the camel's back was they really don't want to reveal their streaming numbers. They're asking for a percentage of the streaming numbers, and the streamers are refusing to reveal the numbers to get the percentage of, which I've been worried about being a no-fly zone from the beginning, but it is the definition of greed if you won't share the numbers. I think it goes both ways. I think there's great success in some things causing them not want to share, and great failure in others they don't want their stockholders to know. So I think it's screwing us over both ways.
I think it's also that the value of that number isn't what it used to be.
Agreed.
And not to defend the capitalist scum of all of this, but like the reality is like a TV viewer from 20 years ago isn't the same monetary value as a single streaming viewer nowadays. And so if a show comes out and it's like, 10 million people streamed this episode of TV, the value of that isn't the same as 10 million people 20 years ago. And so therefore it might look like, I could see them just being like, well, this number doesn't mean that we, the studio, are making that much more. And again, they're fine, but you get the point I'm trying to make. I could see why from a business standpoint, like not sharing that number would be like, well, I don't want to share that number because it's going to make you think that you're owed more.
We made this. And on top of that, that number is also smaller than like nobody does Friends numbers. Nobody does.
Oh,
like
100%.
So I think there's a lot of stacked against everyone.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to go on a bit longer because that is like,
but
how do you get...
I just want to clarify. They should fucking show those goddamn numbers.
Oh,
I'm not. I don't want to be construed as defending these fucking people.
They should have showed them from the beginning. Is the problem?
Yes, 100%. But it's also, the reality is it's also like, it's a hard thing to even quantify. You can count a stream, I suppose, but I don't know the data on, maybe somebody out there who's more in touch with like streaming as a business. Because I know, like, even like in the podcast community, like I can tell you roughly how many downloads a show gets. That doesn't mean I can tell you how many people complete an episode, how many people come back to an episode. Like, it's hard to see the entirety versus a hit. It's just like YouTube hits, where it's like, oh, yeah. The reality is that number should only increase once somebody finishes the video, not when they first get to it. Because the reality is a lot of time, literally, it's like that thing about that happened with Twitter when fucking douchebag took over, where they were realizing, oh, the engagement was simply how many people scrolled past your thing. Right, versus actually hitting it and reading, like, and so that is also a thing where like those numbers might actually be even smaller than the numbers that they will be forced to inevitably share, because that doesn't mean that everybody's completing that episode or that movie or whatever.
And upping the price of everything while this is going on is a real bad look, and everyone keeps doing it. Netflix is going up again. Hulu is going up again. Disney Plus is going up. So it's just, they're messing up a lot and in really interesting ways.
It's tough too, because I want to defend that. Like,
artists should get paid, but they're not paying the artists. If that's why it's going up.
Exactly. That's the point. It's like, I want to defend, like, yeah, no, you shouldn't bitch that you're spending $20 for literally this giant catalog of things, when back in the day you would pay that much
one
just
VHS.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to defend that, but the problem is that I can't, because that money isn't going to the right people. And so,
that's what I think of with like music, when I'm like, yeah, okay, up your rate, Spotify. But then if no one gets it, or worse yet, when I'm like, okay, yeah, this should cost more, but then I look at the things people are fighting for and I see the 2% and you're upping it by 10%.
Right.
Wait a sec.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and the margin is not comparable.
No. And it's not even keeping up with inflation. Like the fact that the things people are asking for are not just like realistic. They're not even like good. And I'm just scared for everyone involved that they're like saying no to a bad deal.
Yeah. A part of me feels like the streaming, I think that animal is out of the pen. Like, I don't know we're ever going to get that back in, as far as, quote, the way it works. Obviously, things are just going to keep increasing. I think you're going to see less available on services, or more shit that nobody's watching or no one's interested in watching on services, you know? But I do feel like the most successful things that I can think of are the things that are going to scale back, that I've scaled. Like, I can think of like the big, international show that I love, Taskmaster, that's not very popular here in the States, but it's like one of the most popular television programs everywhere else in the world. And like that show on its own has its own streaming service. And it's very inexpensive, but you can just pay for that when you want to see it. And when you're done with a season, or they're in between the two, or whatever, however you want to do it, like, that to me seems a more direct way to put money where it needs to be, and also to offer me a thing that specifically I want to watch versus, like I don't want to bitch that Netflix is getting higher because there's so much stuff on there. But the reality is, what's the percentage of that I'm actually interested in? Very small, and getting smaller in my experience. Right. And that's not to discount back catalogs of things, because the reality is it's nice having, I know that this is on Max, and so my example is broken, but it's nice having Friends in its entirety whenever you want it, or Seinfeld or whatever. But like, a lot of those things are like, well, this is a show that I watched once that I'm probably never going to revisit, and am I paying just for the option to potentially revisit it one day? Versus and then also people like piracy is only going to skyrocket if we keep upping the price without, like, I just feel like the genie out of the bottle on streaming has only caused them a permanent problem. I actually think it's weird. I actually think streaming, I think piracy is gotten much better. I can't say that because I guess Plex is this giant thing. I still don't understand how Plex is legal and how it works. But I do feel like streaming piracy became a little bit, at least for peons like me who like weren't doing it obsessively. Like back in the day, if like there was a movie I really wanted to see and I couldn't find it anywhere and I wanted to watch it for research, or if I was writing something, I'd be like, I'll go to Pirate Bay or whatever and see if I can find this movie, right? Sure. But the second things became more readily available on streaming, I was like, I'd rather just pay the $9, $10 and have it in good quality where I can press 2 buttons, and also then have 50 other things I've been meaning to watch anyway, or whatever it was. Right. So I don't know. I feel like piracy isn't quite what it used to be back in the day, when it was just like you either have DVDs or you download it illegally. That's true. Or you have that 6-month window from theater to DVD where you have like the bootleg in theater. That seems less prevalent. Yeah, sure. But I don't know. I don't know how this gets solved, man. So I think this is going on for a bit. I think if it doesn't end by like 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, if it doesn't end in the middle of November before Thanksgiving, I think this is February. You mean the strike? The SAG after the strike. Yeah. I mean, considering how bad the last negotiation went, I can't imagine it ends that soon, to be honest with you. Yeah. I think this is either done in 4 weeks because they get desperate when the writers are done writing and they go, okay, we got the writers back. Now we have all these pieces of paper we need people to act in because of the first quarter next year, or it's not done until first quarter next year. I mean, it's been 95 days, 96 days, I think. At this point. For the SAG, just into the 4th month, and it was 5.5 months for the writers. And the actors have 91 different things they're fighting for, whereas the writers had 17 things in their ledger. So it's a very different scale. Yeah. But that's also more details for AI, which is still obviously a terrifying thing to have established. I mean, you've seen that Disney clip going around where like, demonic entities are sitting behind this team. Sure. I will say that's a bad example, and something it is because it's 2 seconds and it's also that's not the issue. That is no, the issue is stealing the leads and making them sentient. Like it is exactly. But it's a good example that is just an example of budgets being low and not paying to fill crowds. We've had that for decades. And also, by the way, that's something I did. There was a show that was on ages ago, Pan Am. I don't know if you remember that program. Oh, I do. Yeah. I had a good buddy who was a visual effects supervisor on that show and worked in the head of that department for the show. And I went in and played 80 different extras. Sure. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then they grouped me with 7 other people, and we were all in different outfits, and like just patched us in because you had to fill this giant airport all the time. And that's as old as film. That's a regular practice, and they will then also use like readily available AI characters through stuff like Unreal Engine and stuff like that to like fill in holes. And while that's it's sucky because I would have rather have gotten paid to also play that guy or a different actor to play that guy. It's not really like that Disney clip. I will say, like, this is a problem is you're not going to get anywhere if we're not realistic with what it is we're fighting for. Because when that clip went around, everybody was like, oh, fucking AMPTP. It's like, no, that has nothing to do with this. That example is like, it's a distraction from the actual issues because that's also AI. It's also AI versus generative AI, and I think that's a really important thing no one's talking about. 100%. It's also like right now AI isn't fully what AI is becoming. It is like copy and paste.
it's a tool of theft, which isn't as bad as it's going to get, but that's why we need to have these parameters now. There are good things about this AI, especially in like medicine and accounting and all those things, but we're not looking at that because we're afraid of the other stuff, but we need to stop showing examples incorrectly of the other stuff because then they'll like undermine the integrity of it.
Exactly. Yep. That's the point. Is you don't want to give them an argument.
Right.
You know
so
what I mean?
cleanly. Like this is us winning.
The more that you are wrong, the worse it is overall. And that is an instance where we are all wrong by going, look at how stupid this Disney show is. It's like, that's not the problem. The problem is that Disney show didn't have enough money and that poor directors and those poor VFX team weren't given enough money. That's the problem, is that they tried to fill an entire, college or a high school stadium with 17 people. That's the problem. Yeah. And they had all these gaping holes and they went, we'll fix it in post.
And that's going to continue until the end of time. But that's filmmaking now. Yeah. That said, I think overall, once this all gets settled, I'm very excited for things to get back. We're like around the corner from our Oscar season. We've got, a lot of really cool filmmakers I adore releasing stuff in one chunk of year. Like the fact that the rest of the year we have a Michael Mann film, a Fincher film, a Scorsese film, all those things. I do think it's going to be interesting without people being able to promote them, but I'm excited.
Yeah. It might also be like a great leveler
for the Oscars. Yeah.
Of like, all right, who's actually, although here's the thing is the Oscars at the end of the day, the Oscars are still all bullshit. And it's
just politics.
These studios are still just going to pay to have the nominations. And so it's really not that big because the reality is most of the time Oscar winners are only popular because they became Oscar nominees. People went to the theater to go see them if they happen to still be in the theater,
Yeah.
Because there's always a lot of that. Or they re-release it. It's like, there's an Oscar nominee. Put it back in theaters. We'll make more money since nobody went and saw our shitty, pretentious movie the first time around.
Well, I think that's how Oppenheimer's going to clear its billion. It's like $970 million, but that Oscar nominee, boom, back in theaters.
Oh, is it really that close?
It's so close.
That is 100% going back in theaters, and they're going to be like, we're going to just push it over that ledge.
Garrett, it's going to get that Avatar re-release treatment where it's like until it's over that billion.
Good for them. Get that money. Pay your actors.
But otherwise, I think it's going to be a really quiet season. I'm really curious what the fall winter look like. Obviously, we've got that big new Marvel property coming out in mere weeks without any press. We've got the Batman, which is supposed to start shooting November 1st, which won't be able to. It's going to be a very interesting. I do wonder if our 2024 Koi cast is going to feel like our 2021 Koi cast of like, well, that got moved. This got moved. We're over here now. Like This feels like when we started the podcast where we're going like, who knows what might happen, but it's not about death. It's about capitalism. Right. I think next year is going to be like, well, now the shuffle is back and it's going to mirror our phase 2 of Koi cast.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the industry needs to get its shit together.
Yes. And that's why I think I enjoyed New York Comic Con so much, because it's like, hey, comics keep on going. You guys are always underpaid, but at least they're starting to notice. Like, and it doesn't feel like a fight. It feels like, okay, we should solve this. And like, look how popular you guys are without the movie industry. Right. Look how well you're still doing. Perhaps we should open our giant wallets.
Yeah.
But yeah, how is, speaking of which, how is settling into New York? How's it been since you're tucking in?
I think I'm going to hit the dump button on that, and we'll just go right into hotline calls.
Bring on the hotline calls.
Hey there, boys. How you doing? It's Ben from Montreal. Stuck in traffic, listening to your podcast, vibing the bi-coastal and all that jazz. Koi, I don't know if you'll be okay with answering this question, because it was asked once before, and you sort of like wiggled out of it. And since that Marvel movie news day, it kept in my head. It's stuck there. So I really appreciate the relief of being able to say, oh, that's what he meant. I introduced a lot of people to geek fandom through the Big Bang Theory. Remember that? Sheldon and the boys? And at some time, you stated that it wasn't all that good for, geeks all around. And then you backed out. And I was like, what does he mean? I mean, Big Bang was perfect for, allowing people to meet new characters, comic book stores. There was a whole scientific edge to it. But coming back to, Wii fishing or Wii bowling and all that jazz. I always thought it was pretty funny. Always thought it was pretty, maybe something new for most people who are not in the whole Nintendo comic book VHS blockbuster swinging son of a guns. And although I've used Big Bang and I've showed these people, different people, and they sort of like better understood my fandom. So I'd love to have your input on this, your opinion about the show, and I hope for, everything that's sacred to you, that I am not throwing you under the bus and I'm not putting you uncomfortable. This is a real question, brother. In any case, thank you so much for the podcast. I'm having so much fun with it since day one. I love it. Love you boys. And I have to say, I honestly hope that at some point, you guys will be invited to Montreal Comic-Con and we'll get to shake hands. All right? Have a great one. And before I forget, bonne fête, Goy. Bonne fête à toi.
All right, so I'm with you on Montreal Con, man. I'd love to shake your hand.
Listen, we try to keep it positive here, Ben. We try to keep it positive. But I know exactly what he's referring to. And Koy and I both, I think, share the same opinions. Unfortunately, I don't know that Ben is aware of my thoughts on this program that is so beloved by so many. But I think he might be disappointed to find out that Koy and I, this is one of the few things that we agree on.
Yeah, so I try to stay positive. That's why I opened with Ben. I look forward to shaking your hand because we agree on many things. We agree on many, many things. But no, Big Bang Theory is cancer, straight up. It's really bad for culture. It caused way more harm than good. Yeah, you can introduce people to comicdom through Big Bang Theory, but you can also introduce people to football through O.J. Simpson. He still killed someone. So I don't think that what you want to have as an introduction to nerddom should be punching down at nerds. The world of Big Bang Theory is literally people pretending to be us while making fun of us and profiting off us. It invented dumb little catchphrases that made people more removed from nerddom. It made nerds look like the invalid, insolent incels that everyone in the 80s and 70s and early 90s thought they were. It spent its time spinning its wheels trying to be valid. It literally is everything that Community isn't. Community was written by nerds, for nerds, about nerds, and laughed with us, not at us. This profited and basically noogied its way through a bunch of syndication while making us lose 10 years of traction on pop culture. It is a bad thing for culture through and through.
I disagree with it being bad for culture. Like, I'm not going to be as hyperbolic as Koy is right now.
Cancer.
But that's a bit strong because this is my problem with it, is that it's lowest common denominator, low hanging fruit of something that's not reality. Like, I don't know. I've always considered myself a nerd. None of these people seem like friends of mine.
I hate
none of these people.
I would never know them.
Here's the reality is, like, if Big Bang Theory was, in my opinion, more honest about pop culture, then these characters would be significantly more varied. These characters were, kind of like you said, they were what people already thought nerds were. Like, this is no different. All this is it's a not as good version as Revenge of the Nerds was all those years ago.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you bring up a good point. I don't know any of these people, and I'm kind of a nerd for a living. Like, if anyone can say, like, that's inauthentic.
If even one of them was a jock.
Yeah. If even one of them was like a person that had multifaceted elements at all.
That was also kind of a nerd, or I don't know. Listen, I'm going to say infamous, but only for 3 people. I infamously got into a fight with one New Jersey redneck comedian on Twitter. All because
and got me banned too.
all because of Koy Jandro. So Koy Jandro once got into something on Twitter about a Big Bang Theory, and I equated Big Bang Theory as being Big Bang Theory is to nerds what Larry the Cable Guy is to Southern culture. It is an exploitation of the lowest common denominators and the most shallow representation of whatever that is. it's not real. It feels so inauthentic to me. It feels like it's equivalent of Coy and I walking up to each other as, a white men and just being like, "Hey, you got a white dick? I got a white dick. Oh, that's hilarious."
And then doing that for 7 years.
It's literally just, there's nothing there. It's yeah. And so I equated Big Bang Theory to Larry the Cable Guy, and then Larry the Cable Guy decided to comment on it, which I thought was like, dude, are you searching your name right now? Because I didn't.
Yeah, he wasn't tagged.
I didn't tag you, bro.
And then he blocked us both, and I didn't even see it until after I was blocked. I had to look at screenshots. I was like blocked. Anyway.
But anyways, like, I don't know. I don't want to, listen, I'm not trying to shit in your joy here, Ben. And I know a lot of people whose opinions I generally respect who are also like, I fucking love the Big Bang Theory. It was really fun for me. I thought they were cute and fun, and I thought it was quirky. I just feel like, and I also have to admit, like, I'm also looking at it as a comedy writer, and like to me, the humor was non-existent. The humor was never subversive in any capacity. It was always exactly what you thought it was. It was, oh, look at how bad they are with girls. Oh, look at how socially inept they are. And it didn't feel to me like, oh, we don't exist. We can't exist anywhere other than with each other. This is our own little family. Like, I don't know. It's fresh on my mind. And patrons who will listen to the Patreon only pod will know why it's fresh on my mind. But I think about Shazam, the movie Shazam. That was a movie about like, oh, it's about like these outcasts who all find each other and realize they need each other. To me, Big Bang Theory should have been that, but it wasn't. It was mostly just like, hey, what are the worst qualities of that kid that you remember from high school that you didn't really know, but you thought you knew? Those qualities are now a caricature of who these people are.
And that's why I'm saying it set us back, because it showed all of the worst case scenario. And again, I don't know any of these people because they don't exist. They're just the bad elements of people that do exist. And it just played on that forever. I couldn't hate that show more.
Yeah, it was also, like I said, it's just so broad to be challenging in any capacity. I think I like what you said about Community, because I feel like that Community hits the nail on the head. I mean, for Christ's sakes, Kevin Smith, I know those nerds.
Yeah.
Like, those are the nerds that I think we're all actually friends with, versus the caricatures presented in a show like Big Bang, which, by the way, like, good on these people for getting this fucking paycheck. And I would have taken that job in a fucking second. So I'm not too good for it. I'm going to put that out there. If they're like, oh, if you would have got cast in that show, you would have done it. I'm like, fuck yeah, I would have done it. I would have showed up and I would have been like, bazinga, or whatever the fuck dumb shit you wanted me to say. And I would have taken my checks and I would have fucking moved on. So good on everybody who worked in that show for so long. And, good on Kaylee Cuoco for attempting to actually move into an actual nerd space. I think
I've forgiven her.
Outstanding. Harley Quinn's outstanding. And the dude who I love from Roseanne, who I feel like is sort of a staple. Like the only reason that show like ever worked was because he feels real, even though he's not, even though the show is still problematic. But anyways, I digress.
Yeah, it's not my thing, Ben, but I'm happy you're happy. I will never speak well of this show, but I like that you were able to show people nerddom through it, and I'm happy that you enjoyed it. But that show is cancer. So any other hotline calls?
Sure. Yes. Let's do that. I was gonna continue, but let's move on before we start angering people.
This is Ben from Altadena, and I'm glad the bi-coastal Koicast is up and running with relatively few technical glitches. And speaking of great teams that were split apart but then reunited, I've just read the first volume of Ryan North's run on Fantastic Four, which Coy has been highly recommending, and wow, yeah, it's really good. And like the personalities, the team dynamics are really good, and the use of everyone's powers and their other personal strengths are really creative, and the art's really fun. And like, this is a team that, like, I've read a few other Fantastic Four comics, but none of them have really clicked with me the way this one has. Whereas this is just such a great run. And so I guess my question would be, are are there any other books like that where you've read the character before, but they just didn't really click with you, and then all of a sudden a really good run made you see that character or that team in a new light, the way that this one is doing for me with the Fantastic Four? Thanks, guys, and have a great week.
I love this question. Yes, I've had that a few times, and I, off the top of my head, immediately want to say Silver Surfer Black from Donny Cates. I had wanted to understand Silver Surfer for a long time. Like, I've wanted to, and that's why this bumped my head, is like Stan Lee's favorite character was Silver Surfer, and I always wanted to grasp why. And I love conceptually the idea of like this humanoid being watching over us and like the existential quandaries. I just never felt connected to him, so then I never felt the character. But then Silver Surfer Black was able to not only connect me with him, not only connect me to the world, but retroactively made me enjoy the character more to where I seek him out. So that was a huge one. And I think that he's describing something similar to Fantastic Four, where it's really like not just going forward, but also retroactively. I had that with Mr. Miracle as well, and that was not just for that character, but for the entire New Gods. Like that New Gods, yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my answer. Well, the first thing that came to mind is because I read it so recently, because of you and our listeners, is that like, yeah, that reintroduction to some of those characters I knew and some I didn't made me like all of them so much more than any previous installment I had, or any time they came across, whether in some sort of multiversal thing or whether I picked up a random New Gods book as a kid or some shit like that. Like it definitely made it more accessible and more easy.
And it's not easy to find that with characters that deep in the game. Like the New Gods have been around a while.
It's a book that I bring up a lot because I find it so unique. Is Kevin Smith's The Evil That Men Do was the first time I really liked Black Cat. Because while listeners might think that I am just a Marvel shill, whenever I read Black Cat, I just went like, yeah, I wish I was reading Catwoman. Like I always just kind of liked DC's version of it better. And that really like made me fall in love with Black Cat as a character, because it was just so deep and beautiful and heartbreaking in all the best ways. Also, I got a controversial one.
Oh,
and I will say this: there are some characters that I think the MCU did so well, and people might disagree with this statement as well as the one I'm going to make, that it retroactively made the characters better. I have said countless times before that I never liked Thor. I never liked the Thor books. I didn't really care about like hey, I know that this is Norse mythology. Why is it in my comic books? This is different, like I never really liked Thor. And in fairness, ever since the MCU did Thor the way they did him, now I love him. He's one of my favorites. But Ultimate Thor, when that came out, I was like, let me give this a read. People are probably like, what, Jake? Tech Thor? And I get it. But also, I don't know. There was something about that version of Thor who was just a human, right? Who was given the power of Thor through technology. I don't know why. I liked it so much better. And I think there was a way that he was written to be, I don't know, like it was a different kind of character, like joke to the character.
Yeah.
Whereas like sometimes Thor in the books is just played out as like, I am super cocky Thor guy, And in this version, there were times where it was like, he wasn't just a babbling idiot, like in certain ways. I don't know. I thought Ultimate Thor, I know it's weird, but like at that time, MCU hadn't come out yet. And so I still was just sort of like, yeah, I don't really care about Thor.
I also like that they played around with the mental illness aspect of him in the first movie. They tied in some of the elements that did work for Ultimate Thor. And like, do we trust him? Is he insane?
Yeah.
I would also say, and it's an interesting one because it's like an interstitial. Every so often there's a Superman comic that reminds me that I do like him. And then there's a long run of like, I don't get it. And then I come back to him. So like All New Superman was huge. All Star Superman was huge. There's certain Superman books.
I will say All Star Superman, the one suggested to me by listener Gilbert Short. That one, oh wait, no, that's not the one. Birthright is one.
Birthright's incredible too. Another one that got me back.
Birthright's one of those ones where every time I read a Superman book back before then, I always liked the Elseworld ones better. I always liked like Red Sun or like some of the other ones, like some of these ones that are like a different version of it. I've always said before, I like the Marvel Max imprint of Supreme Squadron is a better Justice League than the Justice League books were for me back in the day. But I think that after reading, Birthright, it's one of those like, oh, this is a pure, easy, good take on this character that like kind of that I get more because of the way this is written.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love this question because that does happen decently often. I'm always like, this is why comics are ongoing, because it's a new writer, a new artist, a new world, a new perspective. Sometimes it has to line up with you. And I think that there's a closer emotional connection between the writer and the artist in comics than like say a movie, because there's so many more people, or say TV, which is a different director for certain episodes. So comics is like, hey, you might not like that character now. Wait for someone else's take, and then you can go back and go, oh, this unlocked a thing. And I love that.
Right.
So great question. I'm glad we ended positive, but that is going to do it for this episode of Coicast. Please do check out the Patreon. There is so much goodness happening over there. We talk about all the art we have consumed, and
a lot of changes that were made to Patreon recently. And I want to let everybody know, I'm pretty sure that it's all in effect by the time this airs. Not only now can you preview Patreon episodes for like 5 minutes, right? So you could go and just get a little taste of what our Patreon-only episodes are actually like, but you can now start free trials of your patronage to Coicast. So you can start a 7-day trial, and in that 7 days, listen to a few episodes, see if it's something that interests you, or just be like, oh, okay, this is the kind of stuff they're doing. Then once that 7 days is up, you can cancel if you want, or hopefully you'll stick around for a few bucks. That is great. I do have to say, obviously, your free trial will not grant you access to the Unpunchable Gift Horse contest every month. You can't just be like, oh, if I get a free trial right before the first episode of the month, then I'll be in that tier. You won't. It does not count towards it. It when I look at who is subscribed, it does not show me the trials. It only shows me the actual people, who are paid patrons. But there's a lot of fun stuff at Patreon now that makes it easier for you to go to join. Also, you can now join Patreon you can now follow us on Patreon for free, meaning you can just go and accept to be a patron without giving money, so that you can at least see updates. That way, if you ever do decide like, oh, this episode dropped and I want to be aware of it because I really want to hear them talk about this movie, or I'm like, oh, I want to be reminded because I want to be a patron in a couple months, just go join it for free. And also, like, it's a great way for you to see more of what we're doing. And I actually want to make a point to start like posting crap to the Patreon. That is, that will create more of a community there. Just because, again, it's a thing that you can go and do without having to necessarily pledge any monthly funds.
That's cool. I like that. I didn't know those changes were part of the new UI. That's rad. So check out the Patreon. We've got a gift horse that helps us decide what we're watching. We've got, obviously, all of that art we've enjoyed from weeks before. There's a lot of stuff over there, and there's hundreds and hundreds, literally, of episodes, which is
162 to be precise, because today is episode 162 of both the main feed and the patron-only pod this week.
It's an issue of Spider-Man where he's teaming up with Nightcrawler fighting Punisher, which I really enjoy. It's also in a fun era of Claremont Byrne X-Men. 162. Is this the only time these two things line up? And those issues immediately sprung to mind.
It's like a patron-only pod main feed eclipse. That's happening right now.
Just in time for them to get access without joining it. Even Patreon decided to line up with this eclipse, because now it is a previewable. The two universes are like the incursion event. It hasn't started destruction yet, but you can see the other universe. Like, it's safe, but it's also like, take a peek for 7 days.
Yeah, Nick Cage is looking up like, what the fuck is all this shit?
What's going on over there? Am I even real? Did I film this on a studio? I don't know. They're going to claim I did. But that is going to do it for this episode, you lovelies. Thank you, as always, for being here. Much more.
We also need to talk about the shop before you start.
Oh, the shop.
I want to let everybody know that as of right now, there's a few new items up in the shop that I really encourage you to go check out. There's iPhone cases for Samsung Galaxies S10 and newer. There's iPhone cases there for iPhone 10s and newer. A bunch of different designs, really good high quality cases. They're the kind that have the harder outer shell and then the softer interior, which are the kind that I like the most. And at the end of the day, I always put stuff in the shop that I like. We've got, after years and years of people bitching at me, we have got some sweatshirts coming just in time for the cold weather. We were going to have some pullover and some zip-up sweatshirts should be in the shop by the time the next episode airs. By the time 163 airs, there should be sweatshirts in the shop. So holidays are right around the corner. Go ahead and ask for one from put it on your list. Send your loved one. Say, hey, send them a link and say, buy me this sweatshirt for this podcast that I like and this podcast network that I want to support. Because merchandise is a great way to support the show, not just because we get a couple bucks out of it, but more importantly, even than that, I lie. It's not more important. The bucks are most important. But in addition to that importance, you wear your crap and people go, what the hell is that you're wearing? And then you get to tell them about the show.
And we appreciate both things very much. So by all means, and sweatshirts is exciting. I didn't know that. So yes, also check out all of that goodness. A lot of new updates.
Also, I want to say we have yet to hear from our DC Cosmic Cards winner, the boy Andrews. We have yet to hear the boy Andrews. If you're out there, you got to send us an email at contact@koicast.com so that we can figure out how you claim your winnings. There is a possibility, like I said last week, that whoever this person was that left this review all this time ago just isn't listening anymore. And so we got to figure out how long we're going to give this person. But I got to say, boy Andrews, if you're out there, you won.
Now's your time.
Now's your time. Contact@koicast.com and let us know you exist and claim your stuff.
Hell yeah. All right, well, that is going to do it for this episode, you lovelies. Check out koicast.com. Check out the Patreon now with a free preview option. See if it's your cup of tea. And I also want to thank everyone that said hi at New York Comic Con that listens to this. That really meant a lot. It does help us know that, hey, this is someone listening on the other side. This microphone, now with a country between us, is not just a barren void. So it's very appreciated. Do check us out on social media. I'm at Koijandro. He's at Jake Lloyd Bacon. And also check out the Discord. It is completely free and very fun to see you guys going at it in there. And 818-794-0722 is how to reach us and leave your own phone call and the hotline call, kind of helping us guide where the conversation goes. I love hearing from you, lovely. So if you don't want to call, you can also send voice memo to contact@koicast.com. But that phone number, once again, is 818-794-0722. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you, as always, to Comic Books for existing. We'll see you soon.
More than 400 years ago, there was a man who lived in Stratford-upon-Avon named Shakespeare. This is the man many consider to be the greatest writer of all time. Of course, the few things we really know about this guy are that he sold grain, didn't bother to teach his children to read or write, and was kind of a jerk to his wife, especially in his last will and testament. Meanwhile, 100 miles away from Stratford, on Elizabethan stages, plays were being performed written by someone signing the name William Shakespeare, a writer who often lampooned the monarchy and put his life at risk by doing so. The sort of thing that one may use a pseudonym for, sort of to, protect their identity. Surely you see where I'm going with this. A mistake was made all those years ago, and we attributed those legendary works to the wrong dude. Which begs the question, who really was William Shakespeare? Join me, Stephen Sable, as I invite historians, researchers, lawyers, artists, authors, and more to explore this fascinating mystery of Shakespeare authorship on my podcast called Don't Quill the Messenger. You can hear it now at don'tquillthepodcast.com or wherever you're listening to this podcast right now.
Dragon Wagon.